All right, everybody. Happy Thursday. Last show of 2017. Wow. Show I do will be a new year. Unbelievable. Anyway, let's jump right into this. I want to hopefully finish up this set of notes so that we get into some of these other topics that I can't wait to get to. There's just so much to cover. But this is necessary to cover because it's not only a good follow-up to what we've been talking about, Yahweh being Satan himself, but the nice addendum to a previous show I did on this topic, a while back. This goes much deeper into the rat hole. Let's pick up with talking about satanic imagery in Roman Catholic art. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. If not, you can just Google it. Type in The Resurrection by Pericle Fazzini, 1977. The work of so-called art that was created back in 77 for the Vatican. It's currently on display. It's a statue with some accompanying so-called artistic carvings, affiliated with the statue. And it's at the Vatican's Paul VI Audience Hall. Now, the Paul VI Audience Hall itself is very interesting. We'll be talking about that in a moment. The inside of it, the way it's arranged, is absolutely jaw-dropping. But before we get to that, let's talk about this work of art, so-called, that's on display in that hall. It depicts what is allegedly Christ hovering in midair, supposedly at the time of the future resurrection of the dead, with his second coming. Yeah, whatever. I got to stop here. It never ceases to amaze me. Just the BS of the whole frickin' thing. Catholics talk about Jesus coming again. They talk about the resurrection, but yet they also believe that when you die, you have this disembodied soul that leaves your body and goes immediately to heaven to be with Jesus. And isn't that all what we want? But anyway, you see the dilemma here? You see how ridiculous the contradictions of this farce religion are? And it's not just a problem with Catholicism, it's also a problem with most of Protestantism, because when they broke away from their mummy, they still brought with them a lot of mummy's, personal belongings, a picture of mummy in the locket around their neck, That is to say, Protestantism never really broke away from Catholicism completely. To a very large degree, they kept a lot of the uniquely Roman Catholic invented doctrines, one of which is this idea of a disembodied soul that departs your body. Believe it or not, that's not in the Bible. I actually talked about that a while back. Just one of the many conundrums of the Christian cult. Most Christians today, and only because of Roman Catholicism that introduced this dogma into Christianity, most Christians today believe that you have this disembodied soul that goes immediately to be with Jesus in glory land after you die. But yet, the Bible doesn't teach that. It teaches that there's a resurrection. So here's my point. Why does the Catholic Church talk about the resurrection at all when they believe that you go to heaven right after you die? What the hell would be the purpose of a resurrection in the first place if you have a disembodied soul that's already up in heaven? The whole idea of the resurrection is that Jesus is going to come back, even though you've died in the past. He's going to come back and raise you back to life. And after having raised you, then he's going to take you back with him to glory land. But if you've already freaking been there because your disembodied soul departed your body at death, if you've already been there since the day you died, what the hell is the... Woo! You gotta love it, man. You gotta love it. Just another one of the outrageously ridiculous contradictions of this abominable religion that people never stop to take notice of. And even when you point it out to them, you still get that glossy-eyed blank stare. Eh? Eh? They don't even get it when you point it out to them. This is a major problem. Major contradiction. Houston, we have a big problem here. No, they don't even see it as a problem. Don't even see it as a problem. But it is. It's a big one. Anyway, so here's this seeming work of art. The Resurrection in the Paul VI audience hall. Absolutely hideous. First of all, and if you've looked it up as you're watching, you can already see what I'm talking about. I mean, look at that freaking thing. Catholic art has to be some of the most hideous, absolutely abominable, fear-instilling, horror-inflicting so-called artwork you could ever set your eyes on. Precious few are the exceptions to the rule. And it doesn't matter what time period you're talking about. You can go back and look at Catholic art from the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, even after the Renaissance, or maybe I should say especially the Renaissance, because the Renaissance moved away from the Gothic somewhat, from the Gothic dark side of Catholic art. But now what it introduces, no less hideous, really, just hideous in a different sense, a little more pleasant to the eyes, not quite so dark and foreboding. But now you've got, men that look like women and women that look like men. My God, the works of Michelangelo and it just goes on and on. You look at the painting of, I was showing this to a friend the other day who is Catholic, and he was appalled. He's like, wow, I never noticed that. The painting of John the Baptist. Holy crap, man. And, Da Vinci's another one, guys, which, by the way, both of them are homosexuals. Again, not that I really freaking care, but, I'm not a homophobe. But certainly Christians are, or most of them anyway. They think that homosexuality is worse than murder in some cases. You can be a former murderer who's been released out of prison. Now you've done your time, and you're more likely to receive, welcoming arms than if you were homosexual. I mean, that's just how ridiculous. And yet, all the while, you got to love it because a great many priests over the years, it turns out, are gay. The ones that aren't pedophiles. Sometimes it's a crossover, but they're so adamantly opposed to aberrant sexual lifestyles and or proclivities or whatever, perversions, and yet, the whopping bulk of their priests over the years are the biggest propagators or the biggest fans of these sexual perversions. Yeah. You gotta love it. But anyway, so if you haven't looked that up, or if you don't have not able to do it now for whatever reason, check it out later. Look up this artwork, so-called artwork. The Resurrection. The Jesus figure is hideous looking. Maybe that's fitting. I don't know. But anyway, look all around him. It's supposed to be spirits being raised from the dead, coming out of the ground. But guys, they're hideous. They're skulls. All the faces are skull faces. And some might say, well, isn't that what you would expect? They're coming from their graves. Well, he's supposed to be restoring them back to life, not calling skeletons. It's just hideous. That's it, period. It's just hideous. Absolutely hideous. Like I said, most Catholic art I've looked at, whether it's, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or something just made yesterday, I'm repulsed by it. It's just disgusting. I can't believe that people gawk in awe at stuff like this and think somehow it's holy. Well, it would have to be if it's in the Vatican, right? Just like if it's in the Bible, it's got to be holy. It's the Word of God. And that's why people don't see it. They've already made a judgment before they've opened the book or before they've gone into the church that whatever they see therein is going to be holy and righteous. And, so they'll never see it for the hideous filth that it is. Never. Even when you point it out to them, 99% of the time, they're not only not going to see it, they're going to get angry with you. They're going to write you off. They'll never talk to you again because you've insulted their sacred holy religion. Oh, please. Never talk to you again, but yet they're told to love their enemies. Well, if they can't love you for trying to show them that their religion is a fraud, you must be worse than their enemies, right? And yet, what have you done to them? Nothing. You just tried to open their eyes. You tried to do them a favor. And yet, they will never talk to you again, even though they're supposed to love their enemies. You see my point? If they can't love you for trying to tell them the truth, and yet they're supposed to love their enemies, where does that place you in their little hierarchy of associates? What have you become now? You must be worse than their enemy, right, if they won't talk to you again. And yet you haven't done anything to them. You see how sick and twisted this religion makes you, folks? You see what it does to you? They're convinced that they're loving people. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. You don't even know what love is. You think you're so moral, high up in your little pedestal there. You don't even know what morality is. If you think that baby killing is justifiable because Yahweh says to do it, you don't know what morality is. I'm not saying that all Christians are immoral. No. But I am saying that they don't know what real morality is. They might have genuine aspirations for uprightness in the world, yes. But they don't know how to define true morality. They really don't. Oh, they might recognize that this particular action is wrong and that particular action is right. Yeah, okay. But once again, your views are completely distorted, perverted, and corrupted. You do not have a clear, 100% clear view of what morality is. Again, because you will defend Yahweh's baby killing. Sorry, you have no idea what morality is. You can't say that baby killing is wrong under any circumstance, regardless who commands it. You're not moral. You're not moral. You're not. You may have some moral traits about you and some grasp on a base level of morality. And you might be sincere. A lot of Christians are sincere. I don't deny them that. But sincerity is no substitute for the truth. If you're following the lie, sorry, but you're in trouble. You need to snap out of it. You need to wake up, smell the roses, baby. Anyway, this so-called artwork, the Jesus character looks, like I said, most fittingly, it looks like the devil himself. Looks like the devil himself. So I guess in that sense, it's consistent artwork, isn't it? It's portraying the real Jesus, what he really should look like. But nevertheless, guys, it's so contrary to what, Catholics expect. Why do they accept that stuff? They'll see that and ooh and ah. They'll take pictures and post them up on Facebook. Look what I saw at the Vatican today. Isn't that cool? If they saw that same piece of artwork at the First Church of Satan in San Francisco, they'd shriek in horror. Think about it. It's true. They would. That same work of art, they would recognize that image as Satan himself, and they would shriek in horror, and, they'd probably spit on the thing, right? And they would never take a picture of it. I don't want that satanic image on my camera. But because they see that same image in the Vatican, and it's told to them that it's Jesus, somehow that's okay. It's more than okay. It's wonderful. Think, guys, how twisted this frickin' religion, Christianity in general, but Catholicism specifically, think how twisted it makes people's heads, how distorted it makes their thinking. They literally are drunk while yet being stone sober. Drunk because they can't think clearly every bit as much as if they just downed, a fifth of vodka or something, in one shot. They're drunk. They have no discernment. Oh, they boast that they do. They really think they do. But no, they don't. They don't. Their religion has perverted their discernment. I think there was just a caller. I heard the usual sound that I get. Somebody calls in, and I checked, and I saw there was nobody there. So I guess that was the sound of somebody hanging up instead of calling in. So my apologies. I didn't realize somebody had called in. For some reason, I don't always catch those jingles. So if you want to try back again in a minute or two, take your call. Sorry about that. I hate when that happens. Damn it. But anyway, but you know, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, do a Google image search on medieval Catholic art, for example. I mean, you can put any period in there you want, but to me, the most blatantly obvious is medieval art. We have a Russian icon museum not too far from me that I visited on a few occasions, just because I'm fascinated with ancient history. I don't care even if it's Christian. It's still neat to see stuff that's 1,000, 1,500 years old, whatever. But I marvel, and they switch the displays around every once in a while, so I'll go in there here and there to check out what new things they have. But I got to tell you, at least 90% of the stuff on display in there is just absolutely hideous. And I get just as much of a kick out of listening to other guests at the museum, listening to their comments as I do looking at the artwork itself. It's just, most of them, of course, are devoutly religious, naturally. And you hear them, oh, isn't that beautiful? Oh, look at that. Oh, the Virgin Mother. Oh, it's wonderful. And you look at the images, and they're freaking disgusting, guys. You might as well put fangs and claws on these freaking works of art. That's the only thing missing. Very often they have big, huge eyes, big irises. They're black as the ace of spades. I mean, they just look like death warmed over, like something out of a horror movie. And the faces are usually painted white. So I mean, seriously, it looks like something out of some horror comic strip, vampire comic book or something. It's just, wow, man, wow. Anyway, as I was saying, speaking of the Paul VI audience hall, when you step back and look at this room from a distance, a very disturbing image appears, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't seen this, you got to Google this. Look, you got to look this up. You got to see this for yourself. Type in Paul VI, Paul VI audience hall. You buy your computer now and you're able to do it. Do a Google image search and check out. I don't even have to tell you what it is. You'll see it right away, and you'll recognize it for what it is. But yet, if you're a Roman Catholic and you look at that same picture, you're not going to see it. You're going to try to interpret it as something good with a wholesome message. It's a freaking deadly viper staring you right in the face like it's ready to strike. It's a snake head looking right at you. There's two round windows that stand for the eyes. Above are these white tiles, which, again, for the perceptive eye, represents the scales of the snake. It's got these lines that stand for the stripes on the snake's back. Check it out. You got to see it. It's unbelievable. It's a snake head, baby. Again, if that same Catholic who has no problem looking at that because it's in the Vatican context saw a room like that in the First Church of Satan in San Francisco, they would immediately recognize it as a snake and say, look how evil that is. But they see it at the Vatican, and it goes right by them, right over their heads. The same thing, guys, with the evil crap that's in the Bible. Because it's in the Bible, it's just not evil to the Bible do. Not. Some of you have probably experienced this already, who have requested, my show notes on Yahweh is Satan. Isn't it astonishing, for those that have seen this already, isn't it astonishing? You show it to these people and it just goes right past them. They have no problem with it. I mean, even the most disgusting of passages where Yahweh's talking about, I'll have your Mothers and daughters will eat the flesh of your fathers and mothers will eat the flesh of, their sons and daughters, blah, 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 blah. You can show them hideous, heinous passages like that. And they just write it off. It's evil. Yet if they read those same passages out of some satanic book by, Aleister Crowley or something, they'd be vomiting and agreeing, oh, yeah, that's evil. So, if you want to really mess with them, you really want to put them in a position where they can't play a game like that. Here's what you do. Type up and print out on your printer, or just simply copy right out of the Bible, handwritten. Copy some of those verses down that are in my notes, right out of the Bible. Don't put the reference where they actually are in the Bible. Just write them out with the quotation marks, 3 or 4 of them, and hand them to, your friendly neighborhood Bible dupe, friend, family member, whatever, and say, wow, did you ever read this stuff? This is from Aleister Crowley's, they might say, oh, I don't want to read that. Say, well, but just check it out. It's not going to cause you to get struck by lightning, but just read this. Read how evil this guy is. Did you know he was this evil? Have him read it. And then you know what they're going to say. Wow, yeah, I didn't know he wrote stuff like that it was that evil, that blatant. Wow. And then tell them, oh, by the way, guess what? I was only joking. Aleister Crowley didn't write that. It's in the Bible. Try it. See what happens. I guarantee you that'll be the end of your friendship, though. You won't hear from them again. But at least they won't be able to make the excuse up like they always do, or come up with some BS to wash it away or brush it off. They won't be able to. You will have backed them right into the corner. They already admitted, yeah, that's hideous. Try it. See how that works. They'll have no excuse, guys, for writing you off then. Because you didn't tell them it's evil. In fact, yeah, I would advise you not even to say it's evil. Don't even tell them, actually, that it's Aleister Crowley. Just hand it to them and say, hey, look at these quotes I just copied out of a book the other day. Isn't this crazy? And see if they can guess where it comes from. It's just an alternative approach that might backfire on you still, but at least they can't play their game of trying to explain it away. They will have to admit, if you're not coming out and telling them it's from the Bible, they have to admit. You see what I'm saying? It all depends on the context that you present it in. If you tell them this is evil, but they know it's from the Bible, they're going to defend it. You got to get them so their guard isn't up. Some people might say, oh, well, that's trickery. Well, you know what? It's for a higher purpose, isn't it? Trickery is okay when you have the right motive. You're not trying to mislead people to lead them off the edge of the cliff and do harm to them, or no, you're misleading them for a higher purpose. Yes. In that case, there's nothing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. I remember, years ago as a Christian, that people used to come up with these questions. What would you do if you were hiding out somebody in your basement that the police was looking for, and you knew the person was innocent, but yet if you turned the person over, you knew that, he'd probably go to the electric chair and die for something he didn't do. Would you lie to the police? They were raising the question, is lying always wrong? And some people were saying, oh, no, you have to do what the Lord says. He doesn't want us to lie. So, when you tell the truth, God will bless you, and he'll bless that person too. Shut up. Shut the hell up. Lie your ass off to save the person's life. Absolutely. In fact, that's not even a lie, folks. It might be an untruth, but no, I'm sorry, it's not a lie. When you're telling an untruth or a non-truth to save someone's life, that's not immoral. It would be immoral if you told the truth that would cost that person their life. But you see, for a lot of Christians, you just can't do that because in their little screwed up, head-twisted world, everything is black and white, you see. No, everything is not black and white. No. You got to learn to look at a situation and make a moral judgment based on what's in the best interest of the parties involved. You see how liberating it is to get away from religion, ladies and gentlemen? You can't do that as a Bible dupe, well, for the most part anyway. Most Bible dupes can't do that. They would opt for the not lying option. Don't lie under any circumstance, even if it's gonna cost someone their life, because God wants you to do what's right. No, what's right in that situation is to tell an untruth. That's it. But for most Bible dupes, you can't do that. Isn't that absolutely outrageous? Anyway, I can spend all night talking. How twisted, though, huh? How frickin' mind-screwing. All right, folks, on break. Right back. All right, guys, welcome back. I think we have our caller back on the line. I think it's the same caller. Are you there, caller?
Hello, Charles. How are you?
Hey, was that you that called in earlier?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
I've just been listening. Actually, I called primarily to listen because, of course, this is another compelling episode of Charlie the Yahweh Slayer. Great stuff as well.
Actually, I really want to get to these topics, so I'm going to be slaying Yahweh for several more shows. I finished another set of notes today, and I got to do it. It's got to be done.
Well, it's not superfluous. You'll hear a few people here and there commenting on how they're tired of hearing this from you, but the overwhelming majority of listeners, I think, are enjoying it and will continue to enjoy it. It's like you said, you can't overstate the importance of this because, of course, this was their first successful and most long-running playbook, and unfortunately, it's still going strong in the drawers and motel rooms of ignorant fools everywhere across the planet.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at, the YouTubers, most of them, it's sad,
Yeah.
They're doing a good job exposing other things going on, with the quote, New World Order, but they got to get that Bible plug in there constantly. And it's like, they're taking one step forward and 10 back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like cancer or fleas. You have to remove it entirely. I mean, partial clearing is of no use whatsoever. It may even prove more detrimental because then it just comes back stronger and faster if it's only partially removed. It's like you were saying, the cause of people's refusal to really act upon this knowledge has got to be a combination of ignorance melded with just a subconscious fear of perceived power. On the one hand, of course, most people simply aren't aware of these passages. It's stunning to me. I've said it perhaps too many times already, but our ancestors have had this unholy book, as you call it, in their drawers for centuries, and yet it must be a source of endless amusement to the most initiated of the tribe that it continues to be praised and hallowed. But on the other hand, when you do reveal these passages to people, for example, anyone fortunate/unfortunate enough to catch a ride with me long enough usually here's some renegade in the process, often your show. And, you'll see their eyes perceptibly widen, but they'll rarely comment. I mean, it's so rare, just this amazing information. It's going through their minds. They're hearing it, no doubt. But it's like they don't possess the nobility of spirit to say, wow, I've never heard that before. Gosh, I really have to look into it. You don't even hear, I at least don't even hear that. And even amongst very educated, perceptive people with whom I communicate, you send them just incontrovertibly true information such as you're presenting, well backed up by the tribe's own people. And rarely do you receive any response to this just, mind-altering, entirely world-change, perspective-changing information. It's just...
Yeah. I don't know if you heard earlier my comment, but I think that is a good approach with a lot of them, is you almost have to trick them. You got to present to them a verse that you hand wrote out or printed out on your computer without the reference. Just have them read it and say, isn't that evil? Can you believe that? I found this quote the other day. And get them to admit it's evil. In that context, as long as they know it's not from the Bible, they'll be able to say, oh, yeah, of course that's evil. And then once you tell them, guess where that came from?
Yeah, that might be a good approach. I've actually never done that myself. But it's just
they get back out of it so easy now. They've already admitted it's evil.
Yeah, but even when you get there, past the ignorance part of the problem, it's like taking a time machine back to some tyrant-ruled country like, Persia. Darius is the emperor. And you're going back in time, and let's say you're sitting at the bar talking to some of Darius's subjects about some awful things that Darius has done. Most of them are just going to be afraid to say anything because they know he's the big kahuna, so to speak, and everything. And so, once you get past the ignorance, then you're into the subconscious fear of perceived power, because they, if they believe in Yahweh as God, obviously they perceive him as, their omnipotent evil emperor. And that's even if you get past the ignorance firewall. So then you have the fear of perceived power, and then once you get into the tribe who brought us all this, you've got a legitimate terror of real power. It's like almost like these three, massive thick walls that are protecting the duped mind, so to speak.
Really sad.
Well, anyway, it's a testament to your excellence that most people don't like callers to prattle on too long here. So I'll just say it's another great show. If you could leave me on, though, I'd like to put myself on mute and listen.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks, man.
Take care. Yeah, bye.
Yeah, folks, with a lot of religious people, everybody has different reasons and whatnot, but with the great many of them, I've noticed over the years, one of the main reasons they are afraid to say anything, it's not just because they're afraid that they're going to, wind up in hell and not go to heaven, to glory land, but they don't want to be ostracized by their cult family, if you will, their church members. A lot of them, it's just that comfort that they get, or what they think is comfort. It's really not, but that artificial comfort that seems to make them happy, of being accepted by their little clique. They feel like they belong there. They feel wanted, and so they don't want rejection from them. And so that a lot of times is what keeps them from questioning anything. It's not even that they're afraid of God sometimes. They're afraid of their church members. They don't want to be ostracized. Just like with I mentioned the Amish. They don't want to be shunned by their community, by their family. Their own family will shun them. They won't speak to them again. A lot of times that keeps people in fear. So they never question the religion or the holy book of their God, or, they'll go along with it just for that reason. Pretty sad. I remember years ago, when I was still, in the cult, and still, of course, a Bible believer. When I first discovered the Trinity, the fraudulence of that, how it was invented in the 4th century, I thought that was the ultimate discovery. But anyway, I remember talking to this one friend of mine at the time, and his first question to me was, he wasn't arguing my findings with the Trinity. He could clearly see what I found was true. But he didn't want to come out and say anything like I was, because he was afraid, again, of being ostracized. He told me, he says, well, okay, let's say I start talking about this like you and going around and sharing it with people. And what am I going to bring them into? Because I told him that I was going to be leaving the cult. I said, I've had it. I'm done. I still held to my Bible belief for quite some time after that. But I was done with organized religion. I said, I'm not going back. I'm done. And so he says, well, but what's going to happen now if I take the stands, the stand that you are? If I go around sharing this kind of stuff with people, what am I going to bring them into? You see what I'm saying? It's the cults. They're afraid of losing that acceptance from their fellow cult believers. For a lot of them, that's really what it is. More so than worshiping God, they worship their cult. They want acceptance from it, from their fellow duped cult members. It's a little social club for them. They would miss, the church bowling Wednesday nights and the jamborees and the camporees and you know what I'm saying? That's really what it is for a great many of them. What am I going to bring them into? To me, at the time, I was like, you're only supposed to win them to Jesus, not win them into some church. I had just totally rejected this idea of corporatism, But for a lot of them, that's what their religion really is. That's all it is. It's this idea of collectivization, belonging to a group that accepts you as long as you accept what they shove down your throat. So this is really sad. He admitted to me that what I found was true about the Trinity, right? But ultimately, he couldn't deal with, leaving the acceptance from his fellow cult members. To this day, he's still in that cult. But I know down inside, he knows that what he's following isn't true, at least as far as the Trinity goes. I'm sure he still genuinely believes the Bible. He's never going to question that. He'll go to his grave reading about Yahweh, the child slayer. But he knows at least part of it is a lie. He told me, he says, oh yeah, I could clearly see the Trinity's not. So he knows his church is bamboozling him, but he doesn't want to give up that, social club environment type thing. He's got a lot of what he thinks are his friends. They're not, because if he ever did go down the road that I went down and started exposing the lies that his cult has been teaching him, and certainly if he was ever to find out the Bible is a fraud, that would be the end of every single seeming friend that he thinks he has in that cult. They would never speak to him again. I think he knows that. And so that's why he chooses to belong. Imagine, guys, think about that. So for a lot of them, it's a social club. I'm not saying they're all that way. No, there are some that, well, like I was, I gave up the whole, quote, social club. I didn't care if all of them turned their backs on me. And they did. They did. But I didn't care. I was done with it. I wanted no part of it. And yet I still clung to my belief in God, what I thought was God, or Yahweh, piece of crap that he was. I thought that was God, a good deity, So I still clung to my faith, but I gave up on organized religion. But a lot of them, they can't do it because to them, that's what their religion is. So if they gave that up, it's like they gave up, quote, God. You know what I'm saying? So frigged up, man. It messes you up on so many levels. I got to quickly share this story, and I'll get back to my topic. I've had a few listeners over the years that have sent me links on this and said, hey, did you see this? Yeah, oh yeah, I did. I knew about it from pretty much from the time it happened, way back in my Oracle days. Somebody got upset with me because I was exposing his cult and his precious holy book. And so they wrote an article on me called Charles Giuliani, Saboteur of the Truth Movement. It was written by a Catholic. His name was Fitzpatrick. I forget his first name. Anyway, his whole premise is I'm a saboteur of the truth movement because I'm speaking against the religion of his ancestors. Oh, just wait 1 minute here. That's not the religion of your ancestors. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. From the past, 10 centuries or whatever, yeah. But not your original ancestors. They had that crap rammed down their throat about 1,000 years ago. But prior to that time, that was not the religion of your ancestors, buddy. Your real ancestors, going way back, would not recognize the religion that you're duped by now. No way. And they would be ashamed to call you one of their descendants. But you got to love it, guys. There's another thing that holds them true to this cult. They think that, it's their heritage, their culture. It's not your heritage. It's not your culture, unless you're from tribe land. But if you're a European-born individual, that's not the religion of your ancestors, baby. It's not your heritage. No, not at all. Wow, man. You, again, do you see how messed up this crap gets people's heads? Completely distorts their thinking. Anyway, enough on that. Let's get back to our notes. But I just had to raise those issues as I was talking with the caller. Came to mind. I had to share that. Okay, so we were talking about this Paul VI meeting room. Or audience hall, as it's called. And you know how it looks like a snake? When you stand in the main doorway looking into the room, the back of the room has a snake face looking right at you. It's actually quite fitting when you realize, well, of course, Yahweh himself is a snake, a serpent, right? Don't forget, I quoted verses last week talking about Yahweh, the great dragon, right? Yahweh is described as a dragon with, smoke coming out of his nostrils, fire coming out of his mouth. Yeah, absolutely. The imagery of a dragon is applied to him. So it's only fitting that you would have this kind of imagery. And interestingly enough, did you know that the word Vatican itself means snake diviner, comprised of two Latin words, vatus, meaning prophet or diviner, and of course can, meaning serpent or snake. So snake diviner or snake prophet. Absolutely incredible, isn't it? Nobody ever stops to ask the most basic fundamental questions. What does the word Vatican mean anyway? Where does that come from exactly? There's all sorts of other satanic symbols and imagery all over the Vatican. In fact, that would require 10 shows to really cover that adequately. We'll just look at a few prominent examples here. The Vatican Museum displays a crest with a dragon on it, complete with bat-like wings and open mouth with fangs. It's a crest. In fact, several several popes from over the centuries have had dragons in their official crests. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, as it turns out, this dragon's actually all over Vatican art. That's one of the most obvious ones, but sometimes they're more subtly hidden in with a bunch of other figures on some fresco or something. But this dragon's all over the Vatican. The monument of Pope Gregory XIII, for example, contains a large dragon statue with claws, fangs, and wings. I mean, how can people not see this for what it is? Hey, at least I got to give the Vatican credit. At least they're properly portraying the real imagery of Yahweh. Dragons, fangs, horns, and claws. At least they're more consistent than Protestants. Protestants try to gloss it over a lot more. At least the Vatican is being more open about it. But I just can't believe that so many multiplied millions of Catholics visit the Vatican every year, and they can't tell that the God they're worshiping isn't this wonderful, endearing, loving, I know a lot of Catholics don't read their Bibles, so they have an excuse there. Protestants have less of an excuse because they do read the Bible all the time, and yet they can't see how evil it is. But Catholics don't have an excuse when it comes to, Roman Catholic art. Okay, you don't read the Bible much, but what about all that Catholic art that you gawk over? Can't you see that for the evil that it is? Anyway, Revelation 12, verse 7 has this to say, speaking of the devil. It says, the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, that leads the whole world astray. He was cast out, and his angels were cast out with him. So here we have the devil being called a dragon. But remember, as I said, dragon imagery is also applied to Yahweh. All over the Vatican, both indoors and out, there are numerous representations of grisly-looking gargoyles and grotesques. Shouldn't surprise us if there's dragons all over the place, right? But here we go. In addition to the dragons, there's gargoyles and grotesques, images of hideous-looking pseudo-human faces that have exaggerated eyes or noses or, gaping mouths with big fangs. And I mean, just absolutely grotesque. In fact, Catholic churches the world over, not just at the Vatican, Catholic churches the world over contain Gothic representations of these hideous creatures, gargoyles and grotesques. Oh, they're all over the place. Over the years, as I've gone to various major cities, New York, for example, St. Patrick's, there's some incredibly hideous artwork on the walls of St. Patrick's Cathedral. And again, I marvel that, Catholics go in there and they come out with this feeling of awe as though they've just stood in the presence of Jesus. And yet it's so dark, foreboding. Never mind going into the thing and looking at the crap artwork on the walls. Just look at the structure itself. It looks like a witch's castle. You should see bats flying up overhead, It looks hideous. It doesn't look warm and inviting. Look at it. Those tall pinnacles, phallic symbols is what they are, steeples. But just that Gothic look, guys. And what does that Gothic art come from? It comes from the Knights Templar, for God's sakes. It's dark, Kabbalistic, occultic artwork is what it is. The same kind of stuff that a satanic church would have. Anyway, like I said, guys, it all depends on context, though, because if you had a lot of this hideous artwork that's in Catholic churches, if you had that in a satanic church, and you showed pictures of that to a Roman Catholic, they would agree. Oh yeah, that's hideous. But you show them those same pictures inside of a cathedral, and if they know that it's from a cathedral, they'll say it's good. Oh yeah, that's great, isn't it? That's beautiful. Oh, look at the artwork there. Amazing, man. For decades now, Pope after Pope has appeared in public holding a cross with a downward bent crossbeam at the tip of a long staff. Speaking of this bent cross, Catholic author Piers Compton wrote in his 1981 book, The Broken Cross, Hidden Hand in the Vatican. Here's what he said. The twisted cross is a sinister symbol used by Satanists in the 6th century that had been revived at the time of Vatican II. This was a bent or broken cross on which was displayed a repulsive and distorted figure of Christ, which the black magicians and sorcerers of the Middle Ages had made use of to represent the biblical term mark of the beast. Yet, not only Paul VI, but his successors, the two John Pauls, carried that object and held it up to be revered by crowds who had not the slightest idea that it stood for Antichrist. Now, again, I don't really care what this guy's theology is, or it doesn't matter to me. But I just find it most interesting that this guy here is saying that this same symbol was used in the Dark Ages by Satanists to mock Christianity, right? And now this is the official symbol that has been used by Pope after Pope since Vatican II. That's one of the reasons why, your traditionalist Catholics reject, every Pope since Vatican II, which is kind of ironic because, the only difference is it's all mostly externals. It's still the same institution. It still practices the same hideous practices and observes the same beliefs. And, it really hasn't changed much. The Vatican was every bit as much evil prior to 1965 as it is since 65. But because, they now use things like this bent cross, and, because now there's a lot of 33rd degree Masons that hold high positions in the Vatican today, they write it all off. But, oh, come on, guys. Like I said, it's still crap, just a different shade of brown. The scent might be a little more palatable, but it's the same institution. It hasn't changed to this day, and this has always been the case throughout the entire history of that cult. The Catholic Church boasts that it has never erred in matters of faith and morals. Can you imagine that? So that means that all of the murders of the Dark Ages, the Crusades, the Inquisition, all the torturing, burying alive, burning alive, on and on and on. According to Roman Catholic doctrine, which still remains in place to this day, it has never erred. So those things weren't wrong. And, if you're a Bible believer, you can't argue against Catholicism. You can't, because your Bible endorses killing heretics, torturing them, killing them, raping them. So you got nothing on them. The only way you can legitimately protest the Catholic Church, Protestants, is if you give up the Christian cult altogether, give up that freaking book called the Bible, then you can legitimately condemn the evils of that cult. But not until then. You'll only be a colossal hypocrite to do so. Anyway, let's talk about what's called Room U underneath St. Peter's Basilica in the basement of the church. On a wall in this room is a depiction, literally, of Lucifer. Again, this seems like a contradiction for the average Catholic, certainly for the average Protestant. What is a representation of Lucifer doing in what's supposed to be a church? But once you understand that Yahweh is Lucifer, this actually is no contradiction at all. Catholic Church is just showing you out in the open what it's really all about. Not only what the Catholic Church is about, but what the Bible itself is about. But don't you love it, guys? They have a depiction of Lucifer. And, I mentioned yesterday how during the Mass of Easter celebration 2012 and 2013, the officiating priest sang a song that gave praise to Lucifer. It was in Latin, so most people didn't catch on, but he was singing to Lucifer. I cited some of the lyrics yesterday. Again, you can condemn that as evil, and it is, but you can't condemn it as hypocritical or contradictory to the Bible. Can't do that. No, it's right in line with the Bible. The Bible is Lucifer worship, Satan worship. All right, folks, short break. Right back. All right, guys, welcome back. Well, now you're probably able to have a better idea as to why pedophilia is so big in the Catholic Church, guys, and why the Church has lied and covered it up and relocated priests to other dioceses that have been caught doing this so they can continue on doing it somewhere else. And if they get caught there, they just move them on. Do you see why this goes on at the highest levels? And when a priest gets in trouble with the law or can potentially get in trouble with the law, well, maybe not a priest, but someone, like someone at a higher level, like a cardinal or a bishop or something, they'll bring them over to the Vatican and give them diplomatic protection. Cardinal Law, who just died recently. There's a good example right there, guys. When the whole sex scandal blew open in Boston, he was invited over there, and boom, he was there the next day. And they hired him, gave him a promotion, and he remained there till his dying day. A criminal, an absolute criminal. There's no question he was involved in the cover-up in a major way. Even that movie Spotlight brought that out. And yet the Vatican, and so people scratch their head and wonder, how can that be? And they find different ways of brushing it off, just like they do when you show them problems in the Bible. They invent ways to brush it off. You can't brush this off. This should tell you something. This church protects pedophiles because the whole damn thing is very badly disguised Satanism. I say badly disguised because once you see it for what it is, it's so blatantly obvious in your face. But when you're part of it, you don't see it. Just like when you're a Bible dude. You don't see the problems in the Bible. You don't. You brush them off. You write them off. But they're right there screaming out at you, hoping to catch your attention. Catholic Church is pure Satanism, ladies and gentlemen. It is. How could it be otherwise? Look at the book it follows. Look at the God it follows. Hey, I'll play it fair. Protestantism is too. Christianity is. I'm not going to mince words here. Christianity is Satanism. Oh, I'm not saying Christians, all Christians are Satanists, although I got to tell you, a lot of them are. Oh, a lot of them are very evil. Absolutely. But nevertheless, there are a good many of them that certainly are not evil. I'm not saying all Christians are evil, but Christianity is evil. It is. It's Satanism. A different form of it with a pretty little frickin' sheep clothing disguise, but it's Satanism. I think we've got someone on the line. I don't know if they're calling in to listen, or are you there, caller? Yeah, I think it's someone that usually calls to listen. So, in fact, he is someone that almost always calls to listen, but I like to ask anyway, just to make sure. So anyway, let's see here. Where was I? I was hoping to get through these notes, the rest of these tonight, but I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, let's look at some satanic symbols in the Vatican. Why not? If we've got representations of Lucifer. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, that Lucifer representation in room U beneath St. Peter's, it's as Luciferic as you can get. They don't deny it. It says Lucifer right under it. Catholics will defend that, though. It's complete with, he's got the wings. He's riding on the back of a horse. Catholics will defend it by saying, oh, well, this is supposed to be Satan in his pre-fallen state, when he was still an angel. Does it really matter? Does it really matter? It's still, quote, Satan, right? Why, having his angel wings or not, does it matter? Why would you want to put the representation of something that, is blatantly evil? Once you realize that Yahweh himself is evil, what the hell's the difference? But you see my point. No Protestant church is going to have something like that. Why? And most Catholics, if they knew that, would be repulsed by it. Amazing, isn't it? What they get away with. They put this stuff right out in people's face, and you know why? Because they know contextualization is what makes the difference. They know. Doesn't matter. They could probably put some stills from a porn flick on the wall and invent some way to make that look holy and righteous. And, hey, the priests do it all the time, don't they? That's how they're able to not only molest kids, but even grown women have been lured in to the priest's pants by him somehow convincing them that, this isn't going to be a sin because, I, being a priest, will sanctify this. This is what God wants, They make up all kinds of excuses. Guys, it's happened millions of times over the centuries in the confessionals. They convince people, these twisted bastards, that what they're doing is not a sin. It's okay. It's acceptable. This has been going on for centuries. God allows this. This is how we're able to keep our vow of celibacy and dedicate our lives to the Lord. So you're helping me to fulfill my vow of celibacy. God recognizes it. Don't tell them that it's okay. God approves of this. what they do. That's how they do it. That's how they get away with it. And people believe it because they look up to these people as God's spokesmen, right? It's not until years later when they're older and this comes back to haunt them and they're filled with horror and guilt and shame and, only then does it hit them that they were duped, that they were taken for a ride. But at the time, they believe it, mostly because they want to believe it. They don't want to believe that this guy that they have looked up to is now betraying them and tricking them and, Oh, guys, man, if anybody out there is involved in this religion, I'm not just talking Catholicism, Christianity, get the hell out of it as fast as you can before it screws you up. It will screw you up. It will, eventually. It will. Absolutely. If you're in it long enough, it will screw you up. Get out before it screws you up too much. Most people, of course, most Christians would deny that. Are you kidding me? Oh, this is my life. This has done so much for me. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. You only think it has. It's the sugar pill effect. You think it's done something for you. It hasn't done a damn thing. Only the illusion that it has. Like I said, a lot of people are caught up in, that the environment of acceptance. They found their little church family that become part of a little clique. And so, they think that that's a movement of God. And, you can find that at the corner bar, for God's sakes, without all the trappings. Be better off hanging out at a bar, for crying out loud, than a frickin' church. And I'm telling you, as one who, spent 40 plus years of his life in the damn thing, you just get the hell out. It's not good. It's not good for you at all. Anyway, let's look at some of the satanic symbols. Well, if you've got representations of Lucifer in the Vatican, why not satanic symbols, right? That should be a given, and it is a given. The inverted cross is a very important symbol in Satanism. This same symbol has been employed in Catholic art and paraphernalia for actually quite some time now. For example, when Pope John Paul II visited Chorazim, Israel, imagine that. Oh, yes, he was there. Back in March of 2000, he sat and delivered a message with a large inverted white cross symbol displayed on the wall behind him, an inverted white cross, right there in your face, guys. It is a satanic symbol. On another occasion, on CNN, a CNN broadcast, John Paul II was featured speaking with an inverted cross over a white background behind him. So here we have two different occasions with John Paul II alone displaying an inverted cross. The skull, of course, is an important symbol in Satanism, and so it is with the Vatican once again. Like I mentioned, that so-called artwork in the Paul VI auditorium. It has, these figures coming out of the ground, supposedly spirits being resurrected from the dead, whatever. But they're skulls, guys, every one of them. Hideous. Anyway, masses in St. Peter's sometimes entail a model of a skull on the podium with a golden crown upon it. Have you ever seen this? Google that. Skull with golden crown, in the Vatican. It's just absolutely disgusting. How many times I've heard it said over the years, years ago when I was a Christian, that the pagan religions of old were obsessed with death. Did you ever hear that? We know those religions are evil, if for no other reason, simply because they're obsessed with death. Are you freaking kidding me? A religion that holds as its symbol a cross with a guy hanging on it, dying? You're going to tell me about other religions and their obsession with death? Go to hell. You won't find a religion more outrageously obsessed with death, ladies and gentlemen, than Christianity. Not just death, but gore. Once again, call to memory Mel Gibson's Passion movie. From beginning to end, that's all that movie is a bloodletting fest. I mean, he shows close-ups of droplets of blood, flying into the air as the whip rips open Christ's back. And that's supposed to fill the audience with devotion. Oh, look at how wonderful Jesus' love is for us. You're looking at gore. And here's another good example of the contextualization factor. That same kind of gore would not be tolerated in an average Hollywood film. A parent wouldn't let their kid go and see a film that has blood and guts and gore, right? But in that context, oh, it's wonderful. I want Junior to see all that blood. So we can see how much Jesus loves him. It's disgusting. It's gory. It's grisly. It's morbid. You see what I mean about the context, guys? What is ordinarily repulsive and unacceptable to someone with a sound, normal functioning brain, in the religious context, somehow it becomes wonderful, peachy keen. My God, what a warped religion. Tell me again about the ancient pagan religions, how they're obsessed with death. You want to run that by me again, please? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, Catholic altars around the world often have some sort of relic. As a matter of fact, not often. They do, of necessity. They must. Every Catholic altar has a relic in it. And it's a relic from like a dead saint, usually a bone or a tooth or whatever, a lock of hair. Did you know that? In order for it to be accepted as a legitimate altar, you can't just order the kit and assemble it, socket A into socket B, screw the screw in correctly. No. It is not an acceptable or usable altar. It is not holy or sacred unless it has a relic from, a saint, a body part, folks, a body part. I think it can be something the saint owned too, a non-biological, but usually it's a body part. That makes it most holy, most sacred, more than just, a sacred metal that saint this or that owned. An actual part of a saint's body. Imagine that. Remember that the next time you happen to go to a Catholic church for a funeral service or something. That altar contains, most likely, a body part. You want to talk about a religion obsessed with death. Doesn't that sound like a satanic cult? That's the kind of stuff they do, right? Skull and bones. They drink from a skull. I believe they use Geronimo's skull. They pass it around, fill it with wine, and they all take a sip from it. Everything they do has something to do with death. I mean, look at their symbol, skull and bones. Look at their name, skull and bones, right? Satanic religions have always been obsessed with death and body parts, and so it is with the Catholic Church. That's how the altar becomes sanctified in the Catholic Church, and so it is with a satanic altar as well. Some altars, as I said, contain not just a piece of bone, but sometimes an entire skull of a saint. I mean, that's nasty. That is so disgusting. Oh, I got to throw this out there. The church that this girl I used to date has not only a relic in its altar, but in the basement. Now, I don't believe all Catholic churches do this, but certainly some of the older ones do. This used to be, a must for all churches, just like the altar had to be consecrated with the bones of some saint or a piece of the saint's body or whatever. The entire church had to be consecrated. And so churches used to have, and some still do, I don't even know what they call it, but I'll call it a mausoleum because that's what it amounts to. A mausoleum in the basement. She took me down there one time and showed me. It was so freaking hideous. You literally felt, as you were going down these stone steps, very, very dark, only very dimly lit by the light of a few candles, so that, you couldn't hardly see anything because your eyes weren't adjusted coming from the bright outdoors. It wasn't until you were down there for a while that your eyes would adjust and you could finally see what you're looking at. But anyway, so you're going down these stairs. You feel like you're going back in a time capsule to 1526 or something. Maybe going down to the dungeon to be tortured. Very dark, very damp, very eerie. Anyway, she showed me in this display case a skeleton of some saint from, like, I don't know, the 5th century or whatever. They had a complete skeleton. You could only see the skull because the rest of the body was dressed up. They had clothes on the skeleton, folks. I kid you not. They dressed up this skeleton, and there was a bonnet over the head, but you could see through the opening that there was a skull. It was some woman, some Catholic saint, whatever. Absolutely hideous. I looked at that, and I was so repulsed by it. And yet, the average Catholic, you bring them down there, and they're going to be thrilled over it, and not only won't be repulsed by it, they'll be moved and impressed and wowed by it. I mean, how disgusting. Once again, is this not a religion obsessed with death? Of course it is. This is stuff you would expect at a satanic cult gathering, right? A satanic church. And yet, here you have it in these Catholic churches. Why? Because it is satanic. It is. Now, don't go around saying I said that Catholics are satanic. No, I didn't say that. I did say, though, that the Catholic Church is satanic. Yes, absolutely. It is. And all these things that we're looking at here are classic indicators that should tip you off to the fact that what I'm saying is true. It's a satanic institution. It always has been. Anyway, some cathedrals in Europe actually have the symbol of a skull and crossbones on their walls or pylons. I kid you not. Again, do a Google image search. Skull and bones symbols in Catholic churches or whatever. You'll see what I'm talking about. Sometimes a carved skull is depicted on a lintel of a doorway of a Catholic church with wings attached, which, by the way, was a common symbol back in the 17th on into the 18th century to put on gravestones. Very hideous. Must have been a carryover from the Catholic Church. Right here in my town, in the old section of a cemetery, I've seen some of those. It looks very similar to what you see on in some of the Catholic art. A skull with wings. Absolutely disgusting. Hideous. There's a Catholic church in Kutna Hora, in the church in the Czech Republic, which contains some very disturbing artwork that is made up of the bones, skulls, and otherwise, from 40,000 people, some of which are children. This church, folks, is just absolutely loaded with bones everywhere. They made like artwork with these bones. You got like maybe a cross consisting of 2 femur bones, crossed over. Other things that I can't even make out. Just weird patterns of bones arranged symmetrically. So, it almost looks appealing, like some modern art thing, until you look more closely and you realize, oh my God, wait a minute, that's hideous. Those are human bones? The entire church, the ceilings, the walls, everywhere you look is plastered with human bones arranged in different, seemingly artistic, manners. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting, folks. And this is a church. It's a satanic church, guys. There's no freaking difference between a church like that and a Satan worship cult. Because this is a Satan worship cult. You call that artwork made with human bones? Again, guys, the least you can say about it is it's incredibly morbid, gross, disgusting. But no, it's beyond that. It's freaking downright evil. The catacombs of the St. Francis Monastery in Lima, Peru, contain the skulls and bones of about 25,000 people, all arranged neatly to form, once again, geometric figures to look like artwork. Do you see the pattern here? It's not just one church. That would be bad enough. No, there's quite a few of them around the world. In Bologna, Spain, the remains of St. Catherine are on display, dressed up like a nun. I told you about this church near me, girlfriend I used to date. That's not uncommon. Here's another one, Bologna, Spain. You don't see that so much in the modern churches now, the ones they built now. But the older cathedrals, yes, that had them there from decades or even centuries ago, they still maintain these hideous displays, folks. Entire skeletons that they dress up. Oh, give me a break. Satanists have long been obsessed with the phallic symbol, of course, such as with, the fascination with the obelisk. Likewise, the Bigelow crucifix is a wooden cross with the Christ figure painted on it. But lo and behold, the way the muscles are painted on his stomach clearly depicts an erect penis with two large testicles at its base. You think I'm kidding? Look this up. Google image search for the Bigelow crucifix. Spell it Bigallo. Bigelow crucifix. Do an image search and look at the stomach. It's a freaking penis. Penis with testicles. For centuries, that thing has been reproduced and distributed to faithful Catholics around the world, and Catholic officials must absolutely laugh their frickin' guts off, or maybe laugh their penises off, knowing that people are going to be adoring this statue, praying before it, and all the while, it's nothing but a satanic, phallic symbol. That's all it is. I mentioned the obelisk a minute ago, right? Big with Satanists, big with Freemasonry. It's big with the Catholic Church. What do you think sits in the center of St. Peter's Square, guys? Giant penis symbol. It's a freaking phallic symbol, damn it. Anyway. And that's not the only crucifix, by the way, that has that. There's other ones, too. I don't know when I'll do it, but I put some notes together. This guy, who himself is Catholic, did a documentary on, hidden images in Catholic art. He went back centuries to show that this is not just some modern phenomenon. This has been going on a long time. But it continues on into modern times. Catholic art is loaded. Train your eye to look for hidden images. Remember, like when you were a kid, Highlights magazine used to have the hidden pictures. I used to love to do that when I was a kid. Start doing that when you observe Catholic art, or do an image search for, historic Roman Catholic art. Start looking at these pictures. You're going to see a great many of them, folks, are loaded with outright evil, satanic imagery. There are hidden images of faces of, like, the devil, telling you who their real God is. There are pictures of, in this guy's video, he has one, it was a missile for a youth ministry thing. And right on the cover, so blatantly obvious, it was, hidden so that it kind of blended in with the picture. But once you see it, it just leaps out at you. You can't miss it. It spells out the word sex right there in front of you. And this is meant for youth, for teenagers. So it's here you expect that from Hollywood, right? We've seen that with a lot of Disney movies, right? But in a supposed Christian, whatever, a church that parents take their kids to and trust to think that, far from their minds getting warped, their minds are going to be filled with wholesomeness. And no. The maker of this film brings out how when he brought it to the attention of his local diocese, they did everything they could to shut him up because they already knew about this and were willingly putting this kind of influential, subtle artwork into their publications, guys. But still, that didn't wake this guy up. He's still a Roman Catholic. All right, guys, short break. All right, guys. Yeah, I mentioned that there were other crucifixes that have that same penis image disguised in the muscles of the stomach of Christ. Here's another one. San Damiano crucifix. Look that one up. San, S-A-N, and then Damiano, D-A-M-I-A-N-O. San Damiano crucifix. Check it out, guys. There's another example. The same thing. It's so in your face, so blatant, so obvious. And these crucifixes go back centuries. In fact, the other crucifix I just mentioned a minute ago was used by, oh, no, not that one. This one. I'm sorry. This one, the San Damiano, was used by Saint Francis of Assisi, one of the most beloved saints in the Catholic Church. Who was a Jew, by the way. Oh, he was. I don't even remember if I did my show on him yet. I'll have to look. If not, I'll have to get to that soon. Oh, yeah. He was a tribe member, all right. And he loved that crucifix. Someone there?
Yeah, if I could interject very quickly along the lines of what you were just discussing. Yeah. I remember when I was in Ukraine years ago. I was in my late 20s, and I'm hanging around with this really charming Ukrainian girl, and she takes me on a little tour of Kiev, and I remember going down into the Monastery of the Tombs, where they have all of these very ancient church fathers. I guess I'm not even sure, the Russian Orthodox church fathers or something along those lines, perhaps. But, yeah, the skeletons were dressed up in their glass containers, and also really mummified bodies that were apparently quite old. And, yeah, it was really miraculous to me in the sense that I marveled why anyone would care. It's like, okay, here's some skeletons, here's some mummies, and the world still sucks,
Right.
and meanwhile, they're charging us money to go down in there. It's like, well, if these guys are so miraculous, I mean, gosh, put them to work or something, for the.
I could see in the context of a museum, that's acceptable. It's not gory then. You know what I mean? You're looking at, although I don't necessarily want to see rows and rows of skeletons. No, but I don't mind a mummy or two or whatever. It's fascinating to look at. Wow, that person's thousands of years old, whatever.
Yeah.
But no, in the religious context, what the hell is that supposed to? And then they turn around and condemn ancient pagan religions for being obsessed. You gotta look at it.
Well, what amazed me was I found out later in the rudest, most heartbreaking manner possible that this young Ukrainian lady I was tagging along with, I was of course in love with, I find out her and her friend who were taking me on the tour were both hookers, But as soon as they go down into the Monastery of the Tombs, suddenly, they're these pious, genuflecting Christians. It's like humanity is trapped in this between state. We have this atavistic impulse toward our ancient superstitious past, because it's nice to think the world's full of magic and that miracles are possible. But on the other hand, we have to be very practical to survive. So it does make just about everyone completely schizophrenic.
It does. It really does.
And I how much I love your shows and everything, but I even wonder about the utility of really disassociating everyone from Christianity, as much as I've done it or tried to over the past decade. They might be even worse, Charles,
They disassociate from you. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Oh yeah. But even if you do get everyone to be non-religious or something eventually, they really, I mean, what it would do for sure that would be great is divest, take a lot of power away from the tribe. And
Right.
not just the tribe, but of course all religious exploiters. But on the other hand, I look at my neighbors and everyone, and it's like they're already pretty awful people. If they would do 100%, if they were 100% certain that there's no, good God or something.
Oh, yeah, I know. They'd go off the deep end. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
I mean, we might be living, a cannibal world or something. It might be absolutely unlivable. So,
which really does show that their view of morality is so shallow, because they wouldn't still be moral if they lost their wonderful little God. Their morality only depends on their belief in that thing. You see how it's not genuine. It's not real morality. It's not.
Yeah, so who knows? Maybe in balance, because nobody knows for certain. It might be better that they remain ignorant. It's just a shame.
I agree. Yeah,
it's just a shame that their ignorance has to be tied into, tribal supremacy. That's the main problem here. So I see taking away the legitimacy of these Abrahamic religions as basically, taking control out of the hands of the tribe. That's my primary motivation behind it. But as far as the raw human material becoming aware that there's probably no God, no karma, no justice, this might be absolutely unlivable.
Well, that works the same with, exposing government corruption. There's a lot of people that couldn't handle that and would probably become unhinged too if they found out how bad things were. It's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's profoundly sad. I mean, one gets tired of saying things like that because one doesn't want to be I'm trying not to be a harbinger of doom. I'm trying to be more of a proponent of revolution, not necessarily physical, but just a revolution in thought and values.
Yeah.
And to bolster what you were talking about earlier, just in case anyone out there hasn't heard of it, there's an article where you were saying to the Christians that despite the fact that maybe 10 centuries of their ancestors adhered to Christianity, their ancestors were not Christians. There's an article by Marcus Eli Ravage, and it appeared around the turn of the century, the early 1900s, that is, I believe Century Magazine, but anyone can Google it by the title. It's called A Real Case Against the Jews, and it was written by a Jew, Marcus Eli Ravage, where it's a short article, but he brags openly about how they've replaced our own ancestral history and religions with their own. So
we're behind all your wars, on and on he goes.
Oh, yeah, you're quite familiar with it, right? I remember sharing it with my father, the same one who thinks the devil invented a time machine to go back and create, pre-Jesus messiahs. Because anyway, I shared that article with him, and it was brief enough. I watched him read it, and it's fascinating. I'm looking at him as he's reading it, and then when he finishes, he says, well, why would he write that if this was legitimate? Well, suddenly he's a skeptic. When it's the Bible, it's not a matter of, why would Jesus say that? Then he's a man of faith. But here you've got a verified article, and it has been verified historically. It was. So it's legitimate, and then suddenly they become skeptics. They're suddenly super skeptical. Well, if this is real, why would he write that?
Yeah.
So it's just absolutely.
They reinvent the world to fit their model, their ideology or whatever.
Yeah, but at the same time, although they don't ever seem to have the nobility of character to admit that you've altered their views. It is interesting, like now years later, after all of these debates, I'm hearing my father start to say things like, well, that's a bunch of hypothetical. I'm starting to hear like a change in the terminology he's using, and so after years and years and decades, but we may not have years and years and decades. I told a friend of mine, you got Mark Zuckerberg meeting with tribal scientists trying to figure out a way to put the internet chip in all the upcoming generations' brains. And that would really be the end of human freedom and thought. Because if somebody, tried to tune into the Charles Giuliani show, everyone else would know about it. Because probably they would promote, like, let's say every kid in a certain school being friends with every other kid, Facebook friends with every other kid in the school. They're going to try to create more and more of a so-called global community where everyone's going to be everyone else's, thought crime monitors, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
I definitely see that. Because it's interesting now, like on Facebook, most people won't send a private message. Even if it's just addressed to one person, reacting to one person's post, all of everyone's friends see it, and their friends see it, and so they're trying to get us away from this, one-on-one or just the family.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to be like, and just like on social media, if you say anything that remotely smacks of being
know the potential it has to actually not bring them together, divide them. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah, and the way the people just swoop down, like you say, anything mildly critical of the whole transsexual revolution or anything like that.
Like with the gays now, before you got beaten up if you were gay, now you get beaten up if you speak against gays. Yep.
Yeah, and these were even the thick neck, the no neck guys in the pickup trucks.
Yeah.
They all are telling their nieces and nephews, oh, you're so brave for coming out as trisexual, even though you're 9 years old.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just amazing.
Absolutely now you're a manly
amazing.
Man if you defend sexuality.
you show a lot of guts, kid, coming out with it. Yeah. It's not like, kid, you don't know what you're doing yet. You're not old enough to make that decision. You're just doing this to be popular. No, you showed a lot of courage, kid. I'm seeing comments like that from these guys.
Completely changed and warped people's. Again, I'm not saying we should go back to the days of beating gays. No.
Oh, right.
Completely just turned the thing on its head.
Yeah, I mean, I believe there are people who are born gay and whatnot. I think it would be cruel.
You're not militant homosexuals, right? Yeah,
I think it would be cruel to try to, force that out of them when it's hardwired into them. Sure. But at the same time, with these kids who don't know what they are yet, but they sure know it's going to make them popular.
Yeah.
If they say on Facebook, I just realized I'm trisexual, they sure as heck know what's going to get them the likes and all that. So that's how the programming goes down. Okay, I'm going to just put myself on mute permanently now. Thanks a lot, Charles.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, man. Good stuff. Yeah, it is amazing, folks. And again, that's why they call TV shows programs. They're programming people like a freaking computer. People really are. The analogy is very legitimate. Compare people with computers. They're programmable. Just like you can completely change the way a computer does things by changing its programming. Unfortunately, people are the same way. You don't need MK Ultra. You don't need, implants and medications and, none of that. You don't need to be brought into the, monarch program of trauma-based abuse that will produce multiple personality syndrome. You don't need that. You don't. People are programmable just by drilling them with the same BS day after day, week after week, month after month, and creating the illusion that it's this idea is popular and everybody believes it, and pretty soon everybody will believe it because they've been led to believe that everybody believes it. People that want to be different, they want to go along with the crowd. So whether or not the crowd is actually doing something, if they're convinced the crowd is doing it, pretty soon the crowd will be doing it. And that's what the media does. It creates illusions that something is popular. It's pretty scary, isn't it? In such a short time that they've completely changed people's thinking on homosexuality. We went from one extreme to the other, beating them up one day to now beating you up if you don't accept them. I mean, it's unbelievable, the complete change in such a short time. Freaking scary. Which is why they call this country a democracy. They want you to think that we're supposed to function that way, because a democracy, again, is a government based on majority rule, and the majority are always swayed by propaganda. So, what the majority doesn't accept today, we'll get them to accept it tomorrow, using our little mind control tactics. And, what they don't accept today, they will accept tomorrow. And scary. And we're led to believe that democracy is something good. Oh, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. Of course, no government is good, regardless what it's called, when the tribe is running it. But nevertheless, democracy. People, even a lot of truthers use that term. That's not a good country. It's not a democracy. Oh, whatever. Anyway, back to our notes here. I certainly won't be finishing this tonight like I was hoping. I'm going to, check the notes out between now and Tuesday, and I might just highlight a few points. I'm not going to go through all of this because there's quite a few more pages of this. I don't want to be on this topic forever. So many other important things I want to get to. But nevertheless, this stuff is important, guys. Look how just in your face evil Roman Catholicism is. I can't say enough bad about it, guys. But do understand, it's not evil because it's going against the Bible. It's evil because it's following the Bible. Following it, ironically, more accurately than Protestantism. Not with its doctrines, no. Its doctrines are completely contrary to it. But its practices, yes. And its portrayal of its God as a devil, absolutely accurate. Absolutely. The irony of it, because, Protestantism sells, what they claim is a loving God, whereas the Catholic Church more blatantly portrays God as the demon that he actually is. And then on the flip side of that, Protestantism teaches doctrines that are more closely aligned with the Bible, whereas the Catholic Church teaches doctrines that are totally out of line with the Bible. But yet, when it comes out on the wash, the Catholic Church has it more right than the Protestants do. What a mess. Anyway, the inverted pentagram is a major symbol of Satanism, of course, and it too can be found on numerous Catholic cathedrals across Europe. For instance, the north-facing rose window of the cathedral at Amiens in France features a large inverted pentagram right there in your face. You don't get more satanic than that. The inverted pentagram, used by Satanists in their black masses. It's used by witches all the time, for hexing or, casting spells, whatever. It's like the power center where you stand in the middle of it if you want to call upon your Lord Satan or, pronounce a curse or whatever, It's the single most, that and the hexagram, which of course is the Star of David symbol. That's equally important. But the pentagram is up there. The inverted pentagram is way up there. And here it is on this Catholic cathedral. Inverted pentagram. The Market Church of St. George and James in Hanover, Germany, has a prominent inverted pentagram on the side of its clock tower. Look that up on Google Images. So in your face. Though it's actually a Lutheran church today, it was originally built in the 14th century as a Catholic cathedral, and had that symbol created at that time. We could go on and on here. I don't know how much more I'm going to cover for this, but we got a few minutes left, so I'll continue on for now. I'll see for Tuesday what I'm going to do. I might just call it quits after tonight. Plus, I forget what's even in the rest of these notes. Like I said, I'll browse through. If I see something of particular importance, I'll cover it quickly. But I just want to move on to so many other things. But satanic hand signs, guys, just like we see our politicians using them, guess what? There have been many prominent Catholic officials over the centuries that have used that as well. The El Diablo, where you make the devil's hand sign by putting your index and your pinky up in the air. You fold your ring and middle finger down, and then you fold your thumb across those two down-pointing fingers. So you just have your pinky and your index finger pointing up, representing the horns, of Baphomet or the devil. That's the universally recognized, sign for the devil. El Diablo, it's called. You have had, rock stars doing it. There's been quite a few U.S. politicians that have done it over the years. Frickin' Pat Robertson also has done it many times. But popes as well. Pope Benedict, for example, had made this sign actually on numerous occasions. Google that. Do a Google image on that. Pope Benedict making devil hand sign. You won't believe how many times he's done it. Just for one example, there's a picture of him wearing a red cape over his white robe, with both hands in the air, both making the El Diablo. I find it interesting that he's wearing a red cape at the time, guys. Again, another satanic, overtone there. Red is a color often associated with the devil. The devil is often depicted, fully dressed in red, right? Or having red flesh, if you will. His face is red. Usually a red cape. Here's the Pope wearing a freaking red cape, making the El Diablo sign. They're telling you who they are and what they're all about. Pope Francis has made this sign on numerous occasions as well. When he met in Manila with the Philippine bishop, Bishop Luis Antonio Tagle, on January 16th of 2015, he made this sign along with the bishop himself, making the same sign, smiling with that typical evil grin of his. Oh, is he a sinister-looking bastard or what? Oh, I frickin' can't stand him. Not that I like any of these scumbags, but anyway, even the New York Daily News of January 21st, 2015 was puzzled by this, as was the Los Angeles Times. They both wrote articles asking, what's he doing making the devil's hand sign? I couldn't believe there was mainstream articles covering this. They don't talk about it when one of our presidents does it, interestingly, but they did do it with this Pope. So preoccupied is Pope Francis with the devil, in fact, that even CNN had to ask the question in an article that they titled, quote, "Why is Pope Francis so obsessed with the devil?" Posted on their website on January 20th, 2015. Here's what the article opened with. It says, his tweets and homilies about the devil, Satan, the accuser, the evil one, the father of lies, the ancient serpent, the tempter, the seducer, the great dragon, the enemy, and just plain demon are now legion. They were bringing out the point that his tweets and his homilies make, frequent reference to the devil under these various titles. So much so that he's making more reference to the devil than to quote God. Why is that? Because he recognizes they're one and the same. He knows what God, the Catholic Church, has always worshipped. Just like the tribe that invented the whole damn religion, guys. They know who their God is. They know they're selling you a rotten bag of goods. That they had to throw a few verses in there to disguise their wolf like a sheep, so that, those who have more decency about them wouldn't be frightened away. They know that their religion couldn't be sold if they sold him for what he really is, so they had to dress him up in that nice sheep wool, And unfortunately, it's worked. It's fooled a lot of people, even though the Apostle Paul himself said, beware, for the devil himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore, it's no big deal if his ministers be transformed into ministers of righteousness. Yeah, Paul, too bad people don't realize that same warning you gave applies to you and all your buddies there that wrote that piece of crap book. Another common satanic hand sign, of course, is the 666. It's made by taking your index finger and your thumb and making a circle, and then sticking your other three fingers up in the air and slightly bending them, spreading them apart, but bending them so it looks almost like a swirl, like a spiral. But collectively, the other three fingers add up to the tail of the 6, and the bottom circle is the bottom for the other 3 6s. You know what I'm saying? It's like 3 6s in one. Well, guess what? Many popes have been seen making this hand sign. Among them, Saint, he's now declared a saint, well, whatever. Saint John Paul II is known to have made this hand sign on numerous occasions. Folks, this is not an accident, okay? It's not some random Freudian slip. No. To put your hand in that kind of position is totally unnatural. It's not by chance. You have to go out of your way to situate your fingers to make that sign. And he raises his hand up when he does it so that as his picture's being taken, he'll be seen making that sign. Because he knows most people aren't going to get it. In fact, mostly the only ones who are going to get it are, the very, very few who are alert, but nobody listens to them, right? And, fellow Satanists who are going to love it. He knows most people are never going to catch on. And even the few that do, that try to warn others, he knows the people aren't going to listen to him. Why? He's the Pope. He wouldn't do that. If you can show people, pictures of Anton LaVey doing it or Michael Aquino, well, LaVey's dead now, but